Chapter 25 of A Chicago Princess. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. A Chicago Princess by Robert BARR. Chapter 25. We came to anchor a little after 10 the next night. Mr. Hemster was naturally very impatient, and wished to proceed at once to the capital, but the customs authorities refused to let us land until daylight. Cammerford talked very valiantly of forcing our way ashore and going to Seoul in the darkness in spite of all opposition, and indeed the old gentleman was rather in favour of such a course, but I pointed out that our mission might be one of great delicacy, and that it was as well not to use force unless we were compelled to do so. Even in New York, said I, we should not be allowed to proceed up the harbour after sunset, no matter how anxious we might be to land. This was not thought to be a parallel case, but the old gentleman suggested that, as he wished no undue publicity, it would be better to wait until daylight and make our landing with as little ostentation as possible. I tried bribery, but for once it was ineffective, and in spite of the fact that I incurred the contempt of the energetic Cammerford, I counselled less hurry and more speed, though there was nothing to do but turn in and get a night's sleep in preparation for the toilsome journey in the morning. I was on deck at daylight, and found my Japs had all disappeared except their leader. He explained to me that he thought it best to get them ashore during the night, unobtrusively in sampans. They would be waiting for us, he said, 2 or 3 miles beyond the port on the Seoul road. Now our Excellencies might disembark, he added, without attracting any attention. I complimented the little man on his forethought, and, sure enough, we found our company just where he said we would. The next surprise was that Cammerford also had disappeared. I went down to his stateroom, but found his bed had not been slept in. The Japs had seen nothing of him, neither had any of the crew, so our unbidden guest had departed as he came. Hilda was evidently most reluctant to take the journey. She told me she had seen enough of Seoul to last her a lifetime, but as she found that Mr. Hemster was most anxious for her to accompany us, she did what she always has done, and sacrificed her own inclinations in deference to the wishes of others. We had got nearly half-way to Seoul when I saw with alarm a large party, apparently of Korean soldiers, marching westward. They were easily 10 to 1 as compared with our escort, yet I had not the slightest doubt our Japs would put them all to flight if they attempted to bar our way. Taking 2 of the Japs with me, I galloped on ahead to learn the intentions of the cavalcade in front. They paused in their march on seeing us coming up, and their leader galloped forward to meet me. To my surprise, I saw it was the Prime Minister himself. "Well, you old scoundrel," I cried, "your head is still on your shoulders, unfortunately. What's the meaning of this movement of troops? Do you think you're going to stop us?" "Oh, no, your Excellency, no. I have come to greet you and offer you the profound regard of the Emperor himself." "Now, just try to speak the truth for once. It won't hurt you. You know very well that you had no word of our coming." "Pardon, most gracious Excellency, but your white ambassador arrived as soon as the gates were opening this morning." "Oh, That's Cammerford. Very likely. So he has reached the capital, has he? Yes, Excellency, and has received the honour due. That ought to be a gorgeous reception. And did he send you to meet us? No, Excellency. It was the White Princess. Ah, you villain! You did kidnap her after all. Now if any harm has come to her, off goes your head, and down goes your pasteboard city. Ah, Excellency, said the Prime Minister with a wail of woe, it was indeed depths of wickedness, but what was I to do? If I did not bring her to Seoul, not only was my head lost, but the heads of all my kin, and now, alas, the Emperor says that if she goes not willingly away, he will yet execute me and all my family as well. Excellency, it was an unlucky day when the White Princess came to the palace. The Emperor is in fear of his life, and terror reigns in every corner. Yet she would not go until the king, her father, brought his worship to Chemulpo, and she demanded to be escorted by the whole court with the honours of an empress from the capital to the sea. She was going to make the Emperor himself come, but he bowed his forehead in the dust, a thing unknown these 10,000 years in Corea, and so she laughed at him and allowed him to remain in the palace. She has made a mock of his Majesty and his ancestors. Serves him jolly well right, said I, beginning to get an inkling of how the case stood. Her ancestors fought for liberty, and it is not likely she is going to be deprived of hers by any tan-bark monarch who foolishly undertakes the job. Is the lady still at the palace, Hun Woe? No, Excellency, she is on her way hither, escorted by the court, and riding proudly with her white ambassador. Indeed, he continued, looking over his shoulder, I can see them now, coming over the brow of that hill. She was so anxious to meet her father that she would not await your coming. All right, Hun Woe. You line up your troops on each side of the road, and see that they bow low when the princess passes. I shall return and acquaint the king, her father, with the state of the pole. So saying, I wheeled my horse, galloped back, and informed the old gentleman that everything was all right. He heaved a deep sigh of relief, and I fancied his eyes twinkled somewhat as I related what particulars I had gathered of the reign of terror in Seoul since his daughter's enforced arrival. By the time I had finished my recital, the cavalcade to the rear had passed between the lines of prostrate soldiers. The old gentleman moved forward to meet his daughter, and she came galloping on her pony and greeted him with an affectionate abandon that was delightful to see, although when she flung her arms round his neck she nearly unhorsed him. Her reception of the rest of us was like that of a schoolgirl out on a lark. She seemed to regard her abduction as the greatest fun that ever was, and was bubbling with laughter and glee. She kissed the sedate Hilda as if she were an only sister, reproaching herself that even for a moment she had preferred that little beast of a countess, as she called her, to so noble a treasure as Miss Stretton. To me she was as gracious as if I were her dearest friend. And now, papa, she cried, shall I make the circus come with us to Chemulpo? I can do what I please with them. They belong to me. I don't think we want that crowd tagging after us, Gertie, said her father without enthusiasm. Then, Mr. Tremorne, she said, Will you order them home again, and tell 'em to be good for ever after? And oh, I want you to ask the Prime Minister if I didn't make that old Emperor kowtow to me." "He has already admitted that you did, Miss Hemster." "Then that's all right. I thought they'd try to deny it." I bade an affectionate farewell to Hun Woe, who was as glad to be quit of me as I was to be rid of him, and we have never seen each other since. I don't remember ever taking part in a jollier excursion than that which now set forth towards Chemulpo, which place we reached before sunset. Miss Hemster related her adventures with a gusto and enjoyment that I never saw equalled. Even her father smiled now and then at the exuberant humour of her declamation. It seemed that the Countess was in the pay of the Corean government, probably as a spy. The Prime Minister had telegraphed her to win the confidence of Miss Hemster if she could, so that the Countess had made application to the American Consul and succeeded even beyond her fondest hopes. There had been no intention of going to the house of the Million Blossoms, but she had proposed instead to Miss Hemster a round of visits among the nobility of Japan, or at least whatever section of them lived near Nagasaki. As this round was to take some time, and as the Countess proclaimed that it must be done in strict secrecy, she outlined the writing of the different letters which her caretaker at the villa would hand to whoever called, if an investigation was made, as the wily Countess thought was highly probable, and this scheme proved particularly attractive to Miss Hemster, and was accordingly carried out, and the young lady laughed till tears came into her eyes when I told her how I had been deceived by the receipt of my letter. After landing from the yacht, the Countess took Miss Hemster and her maid to a tea house situated on the shore of the bay, and from the moment they drank tea there, Miss Hemster and her maid remembered nothing more until they found themselves on board the Chinese steamer. "Did you know about the attempted sinking of the yacht?" I asked. "I wasn't sure," she said. "I was in a sort of daze. I seemed to have wakened when they began to take up the anchor, but I was stupid and headachy. Then there came a crash, and I screamed fit to kill. But those Chinese brutes put us into the cabin, and after that, of course, there was no escape. We did not land at Chemulpo, but somewhere along the coast. It was a fearful ride into Seoul, but after that I had my revenge. I made the old Emperor and his court stand around, I tell you, for I had a revolver and plenty of cartridges in my trunk, and once I got them the situation belonged to me." "And where are your trunks, Gertie?" asked her practical father. "Oh, they're stored in Chemulpo. The Emperor wanted me to leave, but I wouldn't until you came and I was provided with a proper escort. He wanted me to go back on the same old Chinese tub, but I told him I'd a steamer of my own coming." We got the trunks and set sail for Nagasaki once more. The voyage was a dream of delight. Never did I see Miss Gertrude Hemster, or any one else for that matter, so admirably charming and considerate of every one around her. Mr. Cammerford provided a most devoted cavalier, and this gave Hilda and me opportunity for converse which we did not neglect. Gertrude Hemster cheered her father's heart by telling him that she was tired of king hunting and wanted to get back to Chicago. When we arrived at Nagasaki I made arrangements for our marriage at the American consulate. Miss Hemster was most fascinatingly sweet to Hilda when she heard the news. We all went together to the consulate, Cammerford asking permission to join our party. When we arrived, Cammerford, who seemed to be taking a great deal upon himself, said politely to the consul, "I should think a real American wedding takes precedence over an international affair, but at any rate I bespoke your services first." The consul smiled and said such was indeed the case. Then, to the amazement of Hilda and myself, Gertrude, with a laugh, took the outstretched hand of John C. Cammerford and stood before the official, who married them according to the laws of the land to which they belonged. "What do you think of this combine, Mr. Hemster?" said Cammerford with his most engaging smile, holding out his hand to his newly made father-in-law. The old man took it, and said quietly, "Whoever makes Gertie happy makes me content." Next came the turn of Hilda and myself. End of chapter 25. Recording by LizMorey Neilson, Vancouver, BC. End of A Chicago Princess by Rupert Tremorne.